Committee Room 21, signed. 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 Committee Room 21. 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 Signed. Committee Room 21, 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 signed. Committee Room 21. 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 Signed.
Okay, guys, I'll just remind you all to turn your mobile phones off as the chair gets his and make sure that it is similarly done. We do have quorum, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Just a word of advice for anybody who either is in the public gallery or will enter the public gallery. They're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode and that all devices are muted. And it's not permitted to take any photographs or recordings of the meeting. Could I ask members, are there any new interests to declare that haven't been declared on our first meeting or since in relation to any of the matters under today's agenda? Oh, okay. And just to read into the record, then we have apologies from William Irwin. We do have Nicola Brogan already online. Good morning, Nicola. And Patsy McGlone hopes to join us later. Are there any other apologies? No? Okay. We'll move to agenda item 2, which is Chairperson's business. Members, we've received an invitation from the React Festival for a Sustainable Belfast, which takes place from the 12th to the 14th of November. The details and link to the full programme are at page 5 of the pack. This is a biennial festival which aims to celebrate and raise awareness of the current sustainability initiatives already taking place across Belfast, as well as to inspire more individuals, organisations and policymakers. There are 36 events taking place over the 3-day festival, most of which are at the Festival Hub at the Europa Hotel, including a keynote address by the Dara Minister on day 3 of the festival. I have had a look at the programme, guys, and it genuinely is very interesting. I'd ask you certainly to take a wee look. If you've had an invitation, if you hadn't, we can get that passed to you. Have a look at the events, and if you're planning to attend, it would be good if you could let the clerk know so that the chair, so that we can have early indication of members that are looking to attend. Item of business number 2, I'd like to advise you of an invitation received from the Northern Ireland Executive Office in Brussels at pages 6 to 7 in the pack. It's on Wednesday the 6th of September at 6 p.m. to 8:30. November? Did I say October? September. Need a time machine. Don't think we could quite stretch to that. November, to join in the evening to celebrate the best of Northern Irish food and drink and to reflect of the unique proximity of Northern Irish agriculture to the EU. The venue is the Northern Ireland Executive Office in Brussels, and Minister Muir and the President of the UFU are speaking at the event. It does sound very tempting, I have to say. I think it would be tricky to justify a trip for the committee at this stage. However, I do feel in the future this committee might want to consider what we can do effectively in terms of anything that's happening with the Northern Ireland Office in particular in regard to the opportunities in the EU. Any members, anything they want to raise in regard to that? No? Okay. Item number 3, members. To advise you that there's a reminder in the packet, pages 8 to 9, for the event tomorrow at Queen's University, which starts at 9 a.m, for the launch of the Centre for Public Policy and Administration. There is a link to register for the event in the email. If you're intended to go, please register if you haven't already. Item number 4, refer you to an update from the clerk to the Chairperson's Liaison Group, dated 18th of October, and that's in table papers at pages 3 to 4. This is from the CLG meeting of the 18th of June 24, when post-legislative scrutiny and strengthened committee scrutiny were considered by the CLG. The correspondence includes detailed updates on both of these matters and the next steps. Assembly officials will be reporting back to the CLG by the 31st of March 2025. Sounds like a long time away, but as we know, it'll come round quick enough. Are you content to note this, members? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 3, we're now moving to draft minutes. Refer you to pages 11 to 20 of the pack for the draft minutes dated 17th of October 2024. And are there any comments in regard to the minutes as drafted? And if not, no, I will then sign these and they will be published on the website. Okay, agenda item number 4, matters arising. Members, I refer you to a copy of a letter at pages 22 to 24 of the pack from the Department of the Committee for Communities, dated the 18th of October, regarding disability rights and representation. This follows on from last week when we had notice of this request from the Committee for Communities. Members, in response to communities, DAERA highlights a number of pieces of important work in this area and states it is committed to engaging with disability groups as it continues to develop policies. Later this year, it will be seeking views as part of its public consultation on the Department's revised Disability Action Plan, which is under development. We content to note, I probably should have declared in that regard I'm the chair of the Disability APG. And if anything comes up in terms of our deliberations, I'll like that just to be noted. Okay. Agenda item 5 is an oral briefing from the Department on the Windsor Framework Implementation Regulations. So members, I refer you to the following papers for this item. Briefing paper from the department in the table papers at pages 30 to 37. The clerk's memo at pages 26 to 28 of the pack, which is written in May and updated on the 21st of October 24 on the Windsor Framework Regulations. The updated list of legislation in the pack at pages 30 to 32 that Minister Muir deposited in the Assembly Library on the 23rd of September. This updated list covers legislation where the Secretary of State has not exercised discretion under Regulation 3 of the Windsor Framework Implementation Regulations 24, not to exercise discretion and control. There's a lot of knots in there. Maybe we'll untangle some of them knots today. The response from Dr. Julie Harrison, Permanent Secretary of the NIO, dated 25th of September at pages 33 to 34 of the pack, outlining the roles and responsibilities of our DERA Minister and the Secretary of State in relation to the Windsor Framework Implementation Regulations 24. So members, I welcome the following officials from the department to the meeting. We have Catherine Fisher, Director of the DERA Windsor Framework Implementation Directorate, and Nicole MacArthur, Deputy Director of the DERA Windsor Framework Implementation Directorate. You're very welcome. Thank you so much. So members, understand the committee has had ongoing questions and sought clarity regarding the impact of these regulations to DERA and the areas of legislation where the Secretary of State has not exercised its discretion under Regulation 3 of the Windsor Framework Implementation Regulations 24, not to exercise direction and control. So this briefing is very welcome today. So I'm just going to ask you to brief the committee, if you will. Catherine, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the welcome and for the invitation to speak. So good morning, everyone. As you've already noted, my name is Catherine Fisher and I'm the Director of the Windsor Framework Implementation Directorate in DERA. And I am joined today by my colleague Nicole MacArthur, who is the Deputy Director of the same Directorate. So first of all, I would like to apologise for the lateness with which you have received the written briefing, and in case you didn't get a chance to read through all of it, just to reassure that I will be covering the points today in my opening remarks. So I will begin by setting out the timelines of the Windsor Framework Implementation Regulations since they came into effect, and then moving on to the three questions which you asked in your letter. So the Windsor Framework Implementation Regulations 2024 came into force on the 12th of April 2024, and they bring Articles 5 to 7 and Annex 2 of what was previously known as the Northern Ireland Protocol and is now referred to as the Windsor Framework under the direction and control of the Secretary of State. There was accompanying statutory guidance which was published a few days later on the 16th of April. So what the regulations did in practice was that it brought the legislation listed in Annex 2 and which is under DERA's remit, under the control of the DEFRA Secretary of State instead of the DERA Minister. However, the regulations state that the Secretary of State may decide not to exercise direction and control in respect of particular functions, and upon the coming into force of the regulations, the Secretary of State decided not to exercise direction and control over 197 pieces of Windsor Framework Annex 2 legislation. Now, this is across the whole board. They're not just DERA, they belong to the other departments as well. So what it did, in effect, this returned the direction and control of around 80 pieces of DERA Windsor Framework legislation to Minister Muir. Now, one thing that should be noted about the regulation is that they do not change the role or the functions of the department. No functions were transferred to DEFRA through the regulations. What they do instead is that for the areas within Articles 5 to 7 and Annex 2 is where the Secretary of State has retained direction and controls. What we do as officials now is we advise and take direction from the Secretary of State instead of taking direction and advising the DERA Minister. So in the statutory guidance, the Secretary of State indicated his intention to exercise direction and control in areas not already reserved or accepted and therefore already being operated by the UK Government with respect to the two following areas, and I'll be quoting directly from the statutory guidance here. So the first area is the delivery, including legislative delivery as required on matters where direction and control is being exercised, of the arrangements adopted between the UK and the EU, and as set out in the Windsor Framework Agreement, which was agreed at the UK-EU Joint Committee on the 24th of March 2023. And the second area is the operations of arrangements under the Windsor Framework concerning the movement of goods between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, or for direct movements into Northern Ireland and incidental matters thereto. So that would encompass arrangements at Northern Ireland ports and airports, the oversight and administration of the relevant schemes to support internal UK trade established by the UK Government, any further legislation related to any of these elements, and any policy developments that would impact on GB to NI movements. On the basis of the two areas that I've just set out, on 17th of May 2024, via correspondence, the Secretary of State exercised his discretion to not retain direction and control over functions concerned with disease awareness, disease preparedness and disease control in respect of both animal and plant health in Northern Ireland, and those functions were returned to Minister Muir from that date. And this handback of functions applies across all the legislation that is under the Secretary of State's direction and control. I will now address your three questions. So you have asked if the statutory guidance clearly explains the situation. So the fact that different aspects of DAERA's function are under some EU regulations are under the direction and control of different ministers means that it will not necessarily be straightforward. And where this is the case, directions between DAERA and UK government officials ensure that advice and directions are taken from the appropriate minister. You've also asked if DAERA is entirely clear on which matters are under DAERA's control and which matters are under the Secretary of State, particularly now that additional areas have been added to the list where the Secretary of State is now exercising direction and control. So once published by the EU or once added to Annex 2 of the Windsor Framework, EU legislation comes under the direction and control of the Secretary of State, and that is the case until or unless he applies discretion not to exercise direction and control. As discretion has not been exercised, over 7 new or amended EU regulations which have been published or added to the Windsor Framework in 2024, they are under the direction and control of the Secretary of State. And the up-to-date list of EU legislation under the direction and control of the Secretary of State is included in the briefing at Annex A, and it's the same list, Chair, that you referred to that was deposited in the Assembly Library by the Minister in September. It should be noted that for amending legislation, responsibility for 5 policy areas is currently split, with the older EU legislation under Minister Muir's direction and control where discretion had been exercised, while the newly adopted EU legislation is under that of the Secretary of State. And your third question was in relation to what the discretion exercised by the Secretary of State in relation to disease awareness, preparedness and control in respect of both animal and plant health means in practice. So it means that any functions which relate to disease awareness, preparedness and control in respect of both animal and plant health remain with Minister Muir unless they relate to the areas outlined where the Secretary of State has indicated his intention to exercise direction and control. So a practical example of this would be the bovine tuberculosis eradication strategy and programme, the eradication programme, which is a statutory requirement under Regulation EU 2016-429 or the Animal Health Law. So while the Animal Health Law is under the direction and control of the Secretary of State, delivering any policy or legislation related to disease control measures for bovine tuberculosis, such as the eradication strategy, is a policy area which is under the direction and control of Minister Muir. So I would like to finish by setting out the remit of the briefing and of the questions that my colleague and I will be able to answer. So Regulation 7 of the Windsor Framework Implementation Regulations modifies Section 44 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998 and the Functioning of Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act Northern Ireland 2021 so that the Northern Ireland Assembly is not able to require persons in Crown employment, and this includes Northern Ireland civil servants, to attend before it to give evidence or produce documents where a function has been exercised subject to the direction and control of the Secretary of State. As a result, my colleague and I can only answer questions on the areas of the Windsor Framework that sit within the direction and control of Minister Muir. So I hope that we have given members of the committee a useful overview of the regulations, and I thank you for your time and welcome your questions.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I really do appreciate your attendance and the answer to the papers. And I'm glad that you addressed at the start the complexities of why the paper was late, and it's because we have multiple layers of ownership in regard to the Windsor Framework and that complexity, which has certainly been answered in some way with your presentation. If you mind, I'll open up with the first question. It's come to my attention, and I'm sure some of the other members will have noticed that there's the Northern Ireland Civil Services currently advertising for a Head of Regulatory Divergence Coordinator, and I know that's going to be based in TEO, but one of the main responsibilities of the post is to coordinate civil service management of the potential for material or regulatory divergence between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. that stems from the Windsor framework. And in regard to that, obviously, DAERA is central to all of this because of the amount of lapover and crossovers. Could you explain how DAERA is feeding into this type of coordination currently in regard to that post and any other mechanisms?
Yeah, so this is a post being advertised by TEO, and at the moment we're not. I'm not aware of what's going on in relation to whereas there is currently coordination. So I wouldn't be able to give you any insights, unfortunately, because that's not part of my role.
No, that's okay. I think it's something that we probably would like, just in terms of being updated on in terms of the committee, because certainly the outworkings of Brexit protocol, the Windsor framework, has been that there's been no preparedness, not necessarily from DAERA, but from UK ministers and indeed the EU's interpretation of the impact on here. So it's going to be really important for us to get that level of clarity, if that's okay. In regard to, I think it was the last piece that you spoke to, and this is for me as Chair, just getting my head around the complexities of how the Secretary of State is separating his responsibility from DAERA's minister. So there's a piece there, it was the last piece you actually got to, which was in regard to the Secretary of State still intending to exercise direction and control in terms of animal health welfare, but has set aside areas such as TB eradication. And then the remit of the briefing says that the Assembly, because the Northern Ireland Act has been changed, we don't have the powers to compel members of the Crown and so on, but that doesn't apply to items such as the tuberculosis, which has been stripped out of the animal health. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Anything that's under the direction and control of Minister Muir remains under the scrutiny of the Northern Ireland Assembly, such as TB was used as an example, but yes, anything to do with animal health, disease awareness, preparedness and control, so remains under the direction and control of Minister Muir and fully under the scrutiny of the Northern Ireland Assembly. So yeah.
And just my final question from myself in regards to the department. Are the department scanning for potential further divergence with regard to the Secretary of State, where he will decide not to exercise his right in terms of any aspect that will come under DAERA's remit? Is it anticipated that there is a pipeline of?
Well, that's for the Secretary of State to decide. So again, I'm not privy to what the Secretary of State will decide, and so that's up to the Secretary of State and can't be covered by us, importantly.
But from your perspective, you're not aware that the department have an element of preempting any of this, or seeking to work with the Secretary of State in areas which would be useful.
Yeah, no, the Minister Muir engages with the Secretary of State so to make sure that there is nothing falls between the gap sort of thing between the two ministers. But again, that's between ministers and not something for me to comment on.
Okay,
yeah.
No problem. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. I'm going to invite the Deputy Chair. Declan, are you?
Yeah. Thank you for that there, and thank you for your briefing. I read over it here, and I suppose, does this arrangement connected in any way to the fact that our Agricultural Act is part of is it Schedule 6 of the British Agricultural Act, or that we operate? Is that connected in any way to this?
No, it's not. This is purely in relation to the Windsor framework and Annex 2 of what was originally the Northern Ireland Protocols and Article 4 to 7 of the Northern Ireland Protocol. So the areas covered by that are customs, movement of goods, protection of the UK internal market, technical regulations, assessments, registration, certificates, approvals and authorisation. So no, the Agriculture Act is not, it's no longer, the EU legislation no longer applies, so that's completely unrelated.
And so I suppose maybe could you outline the requirement for ministers to seek permission from the Secretary of State under the framework, and how that impact on the department's ability to manage its affairs within its devolved remit?
Well, Minister Muir has got some functions under this, and the Secretary of State has got other functions. So whatever's under the direction and control of Minister Muir, he doesn't answer to the Secretary of State. It's fully under his direction and control. And similarly, it's the same for the functions that are under the Secretary of State. So there is just some areas of the department some functions are split between the two ministers. And whenever there's any, if there is any doubt as to which sits where, then we would speak to UK government officials, to DEFRA officials, to make sure that whatever advice we need to, or that the functions are exercised by the appropriate minister.
Yeah. Just finally, you'll be aware that obviously, as a consequence of Brexit, we're out of the Common Agricultural Policy, so we're carving out our own agricultural policy here and our own agricultural and affairs policy here right now. So basically, how does the updated list of EU legislation, which is under the DEFRA Secretary of State's remit, how would that impinge or affect our ability to formulate our own agricultural policy here?
It won't have any impact. Again, this only affects functions that are applicable in Northern Ireland as a result of the Windsor framework, and because the agricultural policy sits outside of that, there is no impact.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, have you any further questions, Michelle?
Yeah, just briefly. It's just in relation to the dental amalgam, and obviously there's a derogation every 10 years, which is very welcome. But there are stipulations which have come from the EU with regards to the levels of the product imported, and obviously the progress there's going to be towards 2034. I'm just wondering whether there's capacity within DERA to manage those stipulations, or would we be better asking for the Secretary of State perhaps to look at that to ensure that it's fair and delivered in a way that the EU want it to be delivered?
In relation to dental amalgam, unfortunately, I'm not a policy official from that area. So, because it's a new, because of the derogation, it doesn't apply yet. So we haven't, it's not part of the list of legislation that's under the direction, that currently applies at the moment because of the derogation and the delay. So, it
was my understanding there's still stipulations associated with that. So I wasn't sure whether or not DERA were over that, and whether or not there was the capacity there essentially. But maybe we can check that.
If you would like to, maybe we can come back to you on that if you would like to.
Or I can maybe table a question. That's okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that sort of speaks to the area that I'm trying to get into, which is there are obvious problems coming and issues coming, and we've got this new posted TO we're heading up in terms of the divergence piece, and if we know and we can be informed as rather than leaving it to the last minute, and I think maybe that's a space civil service is trying to get into. Tom?
Yeah, just to follow on from Declan, and just to be clear on this issue, the functions that are under the Secretary of State, what future impact will they have for the agriculture industry here, for fisheries, for the environment and so forth, since they're under the Secretary of State and not under the Minister here, where we have the opportunity to scrutinise those issues?
Yeah, so the issues under the direction and control of the Secretary of State, there are some in relation to fisheries, those aspects that come from EU legislation. So instead, because they're under the Secretary of State, then the scrutiny is exercised at Westminster. So the scrutiny is done through the UK Parliament, and that's who we, as Northern Ireland civil servants, would be answerable to for these areas, would be to the UK Parliament as opposed to the Northern Ireland Assembly. So the scrutiny function is still there. It hasn't been lost, but it's another Parliament which is exercising it instead of the Northern Ireland Assembly.
Yeah, but the decision will be made in Westminster and passed on to the Minister here.
Well, but the advice will still come from DERA officials, so it's still DERA officials advising the Minister. So it's the same officials with the local knowledge and the knowledge of the impact of Northern Ireland with the ones who are interacting with the stakeholders. So that still comes from the same DERA officials. Only instead of the decision coming from the Minister, it will be from the DEFRA Secretary of State. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's an interesting dynamic. Legislation will still be applied by DERA.
Yes, absolutely.
The
Absolutely, yes.
The difficulty for us here then, or could you explain this maybe further? So the legislation is created in Westminster, it's conferred to DAERA. Where does that sit with regard to the piece then about compelling people to come to... So we could still, I imagine, have the capacity in this committee to bring representatives from DAERA in regard to the legislative application, I imagine. Maybe not in terms of discussing the creation of the legislation. Would that be the kind of picture?
I'm not sure. I don't think so, because if it's under the Secretary of State, then it's fully under the Secretary of State and under the UK Parliament, unless the legislation is coming through the Assembly, in which case the committee would have full scrutiny role. But otherwise, for the application, we haven't got there yet, because we haven't yet made any legislation under the new arrangement. So I can't give you an answer yet. Where this is, as you said, this is very, very novel. This is the first time this has ever happened. So we're working our way through it. And I'll maybe come back. I don't know whether I'll have an answer for you yet, but I could certainly ask the question as to what happens once the legislation made it for the applicability, or is that still the case that then it would be for Westminster to be answerable there? So I'll come back to you on that, Chair.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anya?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. In terms of the EFRA committee themselves, have they any remit over legislative scrutiny?
In relation to any legislation that is going through Westminster, yes, it will follow the full process. If there is so, if that would include the scrutiny of committees as well.
And then obviously that legislation is passed on to the Minister here to apply?
No, it will then be applied by officials, but the Minister responsible will remain, the DEFRA Secretary of State will remain the Minister responsible for that, but it will be DAERA officials applying it in practice, and unless or until the functions are returned to Minister Muir.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anya.
So then, Chair, again, just on that issue, that means the Minister's an onlooker. If the decision's made there and is supplied by DAERA officials, that means the Minister's actually an onlooker?
It means that it's not under his function. He's not the Minister for these. The DEFRA Secretary of State is. So you've got the department has got two ministers in effect. We've got the DAERA Minister for most of the functions, but for those that are under the Secretary of State, then the Secretary of State is, for all intents and purposes, the DAERA Minister for those particular functions. So it's quite strange, because it is, to have two ministers from two different jurisdictions to have direction and control over one department. But we've been making it work since April.
Yeah, I can see that there's a bit of a crossover from, if you look at DWP, for instance, in terms of social security and that type of application where we have limited powers. This is now just the extension of that in terms of the Windsor framework and isolating all of those different points. Could I just and I'm sorry for doing this in a way.
You're okay. We're here to answer questions. I'd rather we answered all the questions, while we're here.
It's something that you probably will not be able to give me the answer to, but I'd like you to take it back and try to. So in negotiations with the previous Secretary of State, one of the things that became very aware is that government had done no preparation in terms of gazing into the future and trying to predict the divergence and all of those matters. But I'm hoping that DEFRA, particularly in the UK government, are now better equipped and resourced on a Northern Ireland focused specific space. If you don't know to the extent of what that resource looks like, could you find out for the committee, please? Because if that's not resourced, I think we could be in for a world of pain. And similarly, what does that resource look like in DAERA that directly deals with that piece of work, which is the Secretary of State's non-discretionary, where he has decided, or she hasn't decided not to exercise the power, or to exercise the powers where they have, because the resource is going to be really important to any future implementation.
No, thank you. I wouldn't know. I couldn't answer on DEFRA's behalf. We could certainly bring you a response, and we can certainly bring you a response, Chair.
Members content?
Yeah, Chair, just to clarify that last question, am I correct in my perception that that's a question strictly on dedicated resource? Well, I'm not going to take us down the road of having what is essentially the same presentation. And I'm grateful, by the way, for the officials who have prepared the information and taken the time when appropriate to come and present on it, and please don't misinterpret that. But I'm not minded to have the same presentation over and over again in the hope of a different factual outcome when I know that there won't be one. So the question is the additional question to DAERA on the resource in and around this issue rather than the detail that's been provided.
Oh no, certainly, yeah. The question, I don't know if it maybe wasn't clear in terms of how you asked it, John, or maybe how you perceived it, but it is in regard to the question hasn't been asked about what DEFRA's actual resource looks like, but it is
resource,
it's a DEFRA resource, and that's why I couched it, because I didn't expect you to have. But I think it's important that we do know, because these relationships are going to be absolutely crucial to minimising the impact of. But so I'm happy to receive that by correspondence if the members are content. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
thank you.
Chair and members.
Thank you, members.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Agenda item 6 is an oral briefing from the Northern Ireland and Environment Agency on the Business Plan 24-25 and an update on the rural agriculture planning applications. So, members, I refer you to pages 42 to 62 in the pack. Sarah, are the second witnesses? Okay, yeah. So,
How many months ago?
refer you to pages 42 to 62 in the pack. The NIEA Business Plan 24-25 submitted as a written briefing to the committee on the 19th of September, and we then requested an oral briefing with NIEA officials on the business plan, also to include an update on the number of outstanding rural agriculture planning applications. A letter from the department dated the 2nd of October regarding the NIEA Business Plan 24-25 and an update on the number of outstanding rural agriculture planning applications. Thank you. I'm just going to welcome the NIEA officials to the meeting. I'm going to get comfortable, guys, yeah? There's tea, coffee and water there, and water on the table. Okay, so I'm going to welcome David Reid, Chief Executive, Richard Crowe, Regulation and Enforcement Director, Liz Loughran, Natural Environment Division Director, and Keith Finnegan, Head of Air Quality and Biodiversity Branch. So, members, regarding the ammonia-related planning consultations, the overall agricultural caseload since 19th of December 23 is 283, including 73 pre-19th of December 23, when the ammonia standing advice was paused and there was a move to the current interim case-by-case basis. During that time, 263 agricultural-related cases have been responded to, with 166 assessed under the case-by-case approach. This is an additional 118 cases since the previous update in June 24, and of these, 166 NIEA advised that had no air quality concerns in 37 cases, and that had air quality concerns in 28 cases. 101 cases have been identified as requiring further information. There are currently 20 agricultural consultations with the department, with 6 being in backlog and 14 cases still within the 21-day statutory target. So I'm just going to invite the team from the NIEA to give us their brief.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Deputy Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee today on the NIEA business plan and to provide an update on our progress in dealing with agricultural planning applications. I'm joined today by Richard Crowe, the Director of Regulation and Enforcement, Liz Loughran, the Director of Natural Environment, and Keith Finnegan, who's Head of our Air Quality and Biodiversity Branch. The agency's primary purpose is to protect and enhance Northern Ireland's environment, and in doing so deliver health and wellbeing benefits and support economic growth. The business plan outlines the agency's business plan targets for the reporting year, including delivery of key ministerial priorities. The agency has 3 key priorities which are at the core of the business plan, and they are environmental, regulation, protection and enforcement, water quality and nature recovery. This reflects the agency's role as Northern Ireland's principal environmental regulator and environmental advisor, protecting and enhancing our natural environment whilst regulating activities that can adversely affect it. The targets and priorities within the plan have been developed in close collaboration between all business areas. We have also engaged closely with our colleagues in the department. This has helped to ensure that the plan reflects NIEA's broad range of responsibilities. We have 20 agency-level targets, 6 of which are highlighted as ministerial priorities. These are reflected in the plan as targets 1 to 6. Targets relating to Lough Neagh and Moboy also feature on the DAERA business plan. The 6 ministerial priorities are Lough Neagh, Moboy, planning, provision of effective and efficient regulation and enforcement of drinking water supplies, the management of 36 plus projects through the Environment Fund, and building capacity and supporting the restoration of our peatlands. Our plan as a whole reflects our ambition to address the ongoing threats to nature and water quality in Northern Ireland from a range of factors including climate change, pollution of our freshwater environment, and the continued decline of our biodiversity. Regulation and enforcement is a prominent theme in the plan, whereby we aim to support economic operators while also safeguarding nature as a principal guiding factor in our decision making and operational delivery. To take this forward, we are in the process of recruiting additional catchment investigation officers. From November onwards, when these staff are in post, this will allow us to carry out more investigations and address water quality issues in the Lough Neagh catchment. This is a crucial area of work and helps to recognise the importance of Lough Neagh as an internationally recognised ecosystem with a wide range of national and international designations and protections. The agency also notes the protection of Lough Neagh and the environment is highlighted as one of the 9 priorities within the Executive's newly announced draft programme for government. Against the background of constrained budgets, this prioritisation is most welcome and will enable the agency to ensure appropriate focus on the areas where there is urgent need for action such as Lough Neagh alongside our business as usual work. The plan is underpinned by directorate and branch level business plans, whilst it will also support the delivery of significant elements of wider DAERA programmes. Progress will be monitored regularly and updates will be provided accordingly. Additional resource will also be directed at identifying on the ground pressure, whatever the source, that are impacting upon the water environment, and the agency will continue to work with colleagues across the department to address these pressures via the 4 pillars of education, incentivisation, regulation and enforcement. The current funding envelope for the agency comprises 37.6 million in net resource DEL and 4.24 million in capital. The net resource DEL budget can be analysed as 57.452 million gross expenditure budget and 19.837 million of income, and the primary sources of income include 10.7 million from regulatory income and 8.7 million from the carrier bag levy. The net capital DEL budget comprises 3 million from the Environment Fund capital, 690,000 for Lough Neagh and 550,000 for conventional capital. The gross agency budget of 57.452 million also includes 39.836 million relating to salary costs and staff costs. At the end of August 2024, the agency had 593 permanent staff in post and 42 agency workers, so this makes a total workforce of 635. The agency also has 147 vacancies registered with NIEA as of the 31st of August. There has been an increase in vacancies as a result of the increased staff resources needed to deliver actions in relation to the Lough Neagh Action Plan and to deliver climate change obligations. I'm also pleased to be here today, Chair, to advise the committee on a further update in relation to our progress with ammonia-related planning applications. At the last meeting in June, members had raised concerns regarding the unacceptable delays and the processing of advice on these consultations. At the time, the committee was advised that the overall agricultural caseload as of 31st of May was 185 planning consultations, 73 of which predated the December the 19th, 2023. From the 31st of May until the 22nd of October, we have received a further 129 consultations, and this brings the total caseload to 314. Of the 314 caseload, the agency has responded to 284 cases, 178 of which have been assessed under the case-by-case approach. Of the 178 responses we have provided so far, the agency has advised that it had no air quality concerns in 41 cases, it had air quality concerns in 30 cases, and it has requested additional information on a further 107. There are currently 30 agricultural consultations with the department. 7 of these are in backlog, and 23 of these are still within the 21-day statutory target. Striving to maintain customer service standards in our role as a statutory consultee within the Northern Ireland planning system is a key target within our business plan, and I trust these figures provide the committee with reassurance of the significant progress that has been made in relation to these consultations over the past 4 months. It is important to note in relation to air quality that our role is to provide advice about whether the proposal will have adverse impacts on habitats and species. And where a final response was issued, the agency was able to advise of no concerns in 41 out of 71 cases. However, with the high background levels of ammonia experienced across Northern Ireland, it is likely that we will continue to see difficulties in planning and permitting for the foreseeable future, and this will also be the case for replacement facilities. Ultimately, it will be up to planning authorities to make determinations whether to grant approvals, taking into account the advice that the agency provides, alongside all other material considerations, including planning and environmental legislation and policy. So I hope the briefing has been useful, and I'm happy to hear any comments and take any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you so much. People are nodding at me and looking at me, so I think there's quite a few wee questions coming, guys, if that's okay. And thank you so much for the briefing. I found the paper to be incredibly interesting, and I appreciate a lot of the detail that you've given us today. I think that's very fair of you. I'm going to ask you a few questions, if that's okay, and it'll go across a gambit of areas in that regard. And one of the 6 commitments I think that the Minister has outlined for NIEA is in regard to responding to at least 75% of statutory planning consultation requests. Could you tell us where you guys are in regards to either meeting that target, and if not, where it is at the moment?
Yeah, we're actually about to get an update on our 6-monthly progress, so we don't have the exact figures at the minute, but it had slipped in the earlier part of the year, and a lot of the work that we have done over the summer has been aimed to catch up on that. So I will be able to provide I could follow this up with a written update probably in about 2 weeks when we've done our 6-monthly update. But I don't have the exact figures at the minute, unless, Liz, you...
I don't have the exact figures because they're still caught in that update progress. As I say, I mean, my initial sense is there has been a dip which we are working to recover through the task force that you'd set up, and through working through some issues with the planning authorities, trying to get things as smoothly as possible between ourselves so that there's as little double handling as possible. And also, certainly my predecessor and I have been looking at building resilience within the planning teams. We tend to get dips at periods where we have people going off annual leave, sick leave, maternity leave, so it's trying to get enough permanent staff in place to try and back that, but we should have the official figures in the next couple of weeks, so we will write to you.
Okay, and I'm just going to go into now the piece of which you talked about staff shortages in different business areas. Could you give me a clearer picture of, are there any specific areas of business where it's more pronounced, and what steps are being taken to address those shortages?
Yeah, it is across the board, Chair. At the minute we have about 147 registered vacancies, and staff in post of about 635, including agency workers. We are working closely with NIEA in order to progress competitions as quickly as possible, but progress hasn't been quite as quick as we would like. We're working closely with staff to ensure appropriate resilience within individual teams, but in terms of business impact, there is a business impact right across the agency because the shortages are fairly stark at the minute.
Is there I've become very frustrated with some HR processes in terms of recruitment, and always did, even in my previous work. Is there an average time that you're aware of? So from seeking help from HR director, I think, is that who you use?
HR Connect.
HR Connect.
HR, yes.
What is the time? I know I should really be asking them, but from your perspective, is trying to recruit from you approach them to you have an employee. How long does that take?
It's difficult to say because it'll vary depending on the competition. I would imagine for large-scale competitions, the time frames could be a lot longer than competitions they fill, say, 1 or 2 posts or whatever. But you would be talking months as opposed to weeks, and in some cases it could take much longer than that. But I wouldn't have any figures that I could give you any accurate information on that at the moment.
Great I have with the civil service in its wider extent, not NIEA. There was an interesting one there about air quality cases. There were 30 that didn't meet the target. I'm interested to know, is that a geographical area? Is it widespread across Northern Ireland, or is there anything that you would be concerned about in any specific areas that there isn't maybe a cluster effect or?
No, so with regards to our pollution, ammonia emissions, they're exceeded over the total territory in effect, so there are issues in all areas. You do see some clustering of, for example, poultry or pig production farms around the processing areas, you know, but in effect, there's issues across the whole of Northern Ireland with regards to ammonia.
Okay, I'm going to go on a Busman's one. I'm just very sorry, members, on this. John, did you want to come in on that one, though? Have you? No?
On the planning related matters?
I'll come back to that if you don't mind. I want to finish this wee one out here. So in terms of the technical, so those areas where pig houses and chicken houses and stuff, are there mechanical solutions available? So for instance, in the fire service, we used to have things like smoke scrubbers and stuff, which obviously...
Yeah, there's technological solutions to reduce emissions across all livestock types. You know, they range from relatively straightforward, low emission fluorine covering slurry stores to the more complex computer operated scrubber systems, which were traditionally more appropriate for pigs and poultry because all the emissions are going out effectively a chimney and they can be captured, but those are now being developed for cattle housing as well. And so you can get those for cattle housing. We haven't seen any in Northern Ireland to date.
Okay. I'm going to do my final one, and John, I'm going to go on to a planning issue, so you might or may not. And I'm sorry for doing this because it wasn't in the briefing guide, but it's very topical this week in regard to the announcement in and around the A5 and some of the difficulties they're going to pertain to that. Have NIEA been involved at this stage and been consulted on and provided anything in regard to the A5, and are there any concerns that NIEA would have and how those could be mitigated?
You want to start?
Well, I can start, yes. So we are a statutory consultee on any plan or project that can impact the environment. That includes the A5, the same as it would a farm development or a housing development. So absolutely, we've been a consultee the whole way through the process. And more recently, just this year, in the final environmental assessments that were completed, we were consulted on those and give our opinion to DFI colleagues before they completed their environmental assessments.
Okay, well, thank you. And we can obviously those consultations and responses will be available online. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Declan.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just ask you, I understand that obviously you deal with planning on a case-by-case basis. When are we likely to see a finalised ammonia strategy?
The ammonia strategy is being developed by our policy colleagues. My understanding is that they're nearing final stages, ready for consultation. Do you have details of when they're likely to be?
I think it's March 25 is my latest understanding.
So we'll see an ammonia strategy in March 25.
That's our understanding, Declan, but our policy colleagues will be leading on that, so they'd probably be better placed to advise on it than we would.
Yeah, because, you know, and it's been aired here at this meeting before and other meetings, the fact that farmers can't replace like for like is very, very detrimental to their business. And, you know, it's actually impeding them from maybe building more efficient infrastructure on their farms that would have less environmental impact. So I think it'll be important, and I know it's probably beyond your remit, to try and move forward with that strategy so that you aren't just dealing with that case, at least you'll have a finalised strategy so we know what the parameters are.
Yeah, would agree.
Thank you, Declan. Next one was Michelle.
Okay, thank you very much. Sort of linked to those two questions would be the issue around betterment, and I know you've made a comment with regards to that. I'm not really clear whether there's been an awful lot of change from the last time we did have the conversation, because obviously there's an anomaly in the fact that, you know, we have an ammonia policy of types which is being worked on and advised on, but it isn't preventing I suppose improvements on farms. I suppose particularly linked, and I know that we will come back to this at a later date, is the issue around the A5, and I suppose it draws a focus to this in the fact that there's going to be a very clear and detrimental impact on a large number of farm businesses. Their yards, houses, etc. will then become part of that scheme, but yet whenever they come to perhaps put in an application to replace, that the policy that's currently being applied through yourselves and obviously local planning authorities could then cause a problem. So I'm just wondering whether there's a focused piece of work looking around the issue of betterment.
So yeah, I think there's two things. I know I'm not good at explaining this because I've tried a number of times before. So we have to separate the assessment process for permissions, which is very legally tight and bound, and that's to ensure rightly that people doing my job in 20 years and people doing your job in 20 years aren't sitting here making the same arguments. On top of that legal duty, we and the department have the legal duty to fix the existing pollution problems, and that's where the betterment comes in, because in a lot of cases the tools we have available to reduce the existing pollution are being used to facilitate new development, whereas that new development needs to be sustainable on its own without locking in the existing super high levels of pollution. And I do understand that is a frustration, but if I give an example of a case that came across my desk just yesterday, where the current emissions are in excess of 1,000% of the level that causes damage. Now, what we have been asked is, well, if that development reduces by 5 or 10%, that should be acceptable. But clearly, if we give permission for that, it would lock that pollution levels in at a level which we cannot then change in the future. So we are working on a way to deal with this, and certainly that will particularly apply to those regulated farms that require permits, because we have a duty to review those periodically, and in those cases we can look at doing an environmental improvement plan potentially for those farms where the reductions to get to a sustainable level are made over a period of time, maybe a 5-year period. So we are investigating how to make this better for applicants. But with regards to giving new permissions, there's a very clear legal duty there where no official can give permission that is causing environmental damage.
And I appreciate what you're saying, but there are people who are busy doing their business at the moment who are now basically caught between the devil and deep blue sea, because they have been caught by what is an executive commitment to deliver the A5 for all the right reasons. However, at the same time now they're caught if they're going to try to replace what they're losing, which they haven't offered to lose, but they're now losing by no fault of their own, by what is, again, an executive decision. On
those specific farms in the A5, we haven't seen, I'm not aware of us having any applications from those. Now, I may be wrong, but...
they won't have applications as yet, because obviously the announcement has just been made, but all I'm asking for, I suppose, the stage is a commitment to sort of focus minds in relation to the issue of betterment, because there are obviously issues with regards to applications which are currently in the system, but there are also going to be a number of applications which are going to come through as a consequence of decisions which have been made by the executive. So I suppose I'll leave that point there at this point. Sorry, Chair, I do have a couple of other issues. The other is in relation to your planning responses, and I know this has been mentioned as well, but you're saying you're going to respond to at least 75% of statutory planning consultation requests within 21 days. Why is your expectation and target so low? Why should it not be higher than 75%? And the reason I'm saying that is because whenever I do look at the statistics for last year, which have been produced, regionally significant applications, you only responded 25% of those in 21 days. Major applications, 33% in 21 days. Now, local applications were essentially low-hanging fruit. You have responded by 76% of those in 21 days, which maybe in effect massages your figures. So I'm not really sure your 75% is really pushing.
When the target was set, we basically had to take into consideration the level of resourcing that we have. We've also to ensure that we can get to the 75%. We've taken steps to strengthen the resource that we have within planning teams, and that effectively means basically moving staff around within the agency to focus on those priority areas of work. On the regionally significant side, we have basically moved to, I think it's treble the size of the renewables team, from 4 to 12, to try and improve the statistics in relation to those large renewables applications, where we had in the past seen quite a significant challenge in terms of actually having the expertise within the department, or within the agency, to address those and basically put those forward quickly. So in terms of prioritisation, we're prioritising the resource that we have to basically address the planning challenges that we have. We are taking steps. The resources that we have are very limited, and ideally I would like to be in a position where I could give the committee an assurance that I could get 100% of those cases addressed within 21 days. But at this stage we just don't have the resources to go beyond the 75%. But that is something longer term that we will obviously want to improve.
Okay, so I guess we'll keep a watching brief then on that particular aspect. The other thing, finally, Chair, is in relation to Target 1, which it's disappointing that, and I understand that you are going to obviously do this piece of work around cross-compliance inspections on farms, but yet nowhere else in your business plan do you talk about the enforcement of any other businesses. Bearing in mind that in the last 4 years, 503 substantiated pollution incidents were actually attributed to Northern Ireland Water. And I'm guessing there are many more that probably weren't caught or investigated. So it's really just to make the point that I am disappointed that the focus just seems to be on farms within your business plan.
In terms of any water, you will be aware that the Minister has announced that he wants the SORPI reviewed, the Statement of Regulatory Practice, in relation to any water, so that is something that we are considering at this stage. And I don't know, Richard, is there anything you want to add to that?
Just a short comment on that. The cross-compliance aspect is identified in the report as a specific target, but I can assure the committee that we are also carrying out a wide range of regulatory and enforcement work on all industries that are impacting the environment across the whole region. So it may look in terms of the business plan that is singled out, but that is absolutely not the case, in that we have other targets around our regulatory inspection and compliance regime to deliver 90% of those compliance inspections, and that is across the board in terms of industry. So and David has referred to our ongoing compliance with NI Water as our waste and water company. So I can assure the committee that our commitment is to regulate and enforce across the board, and not just on cross-compliance in agriculture.
Okay, and the revised advice that you refer to in Target 11, will this require executive approval given its cross-departmental nature? You have a target date of the 31st of March in relation to that, so I'm just curious as to whether that is when the paper is presented to the Minister, when the Minister signs the paper off, or whether that's when it's sent to the executive for executive sign-off.
Sorry, just checking, is this the ASSI targets?
Yeah, this is with regards to developing a revised advice, operational protocol and assessment. It's in relation to the air pollution impacts.
Yeah, that will follow on from the development of the ammonia strategy.
The delay with final procedure is to do with completing the strategic environmental assessment that's required, and it's envisaged that will be in tandem with the ammonia strategy.
I'm just curious about the date, whether that date is what do you hope to have done by March 2025? Is that you delivering the paper to the Minister, or is that it going to the executive, or?
Yeah, it is. So it's not. We are still calling our new assessment procedure an interim procedure because it hasn't received that final sign-off. We expect that to be at the same time as the ammonia strategy. But in the meantime, it is actively being used.
Okay. But I'm just curious about your dates and what those dates mean. Does that mean that it's off your desk and then onto somebody else's desk?
No, it should be completed, we hope, by March 25.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. John?
Chair, thank you. Can I start with your permission, Chair, by taking a moment to thank the officials from NIEA and other agencies who were out doing the public information sessions in Loughnane in the past while. I attended an event in Clonavy last week, and it was very well attended. My understanding is the other events at Ballyronan and I think Craigavon as well were well attended also. So I'm grateful for the participation in that public engagement. My question, Chair, is I suppose unashamedly based on better environmental outcomes rather than when and how process is completed or when a piece of paper gets a stamp on it. We have been told on previous occasions that a substantial proportion of the outstanding planning applications would not necessarily have led to better outcomes on ammonia emissions and environmental improvement. Is that still the case, or has there been an improvement in that regard? And then, second to that, if that is still the case, what education piece has taken place for applicants to ensure that improvements and better outcomes are demonstrated before the applications are made?
Do you want to comment first on the applications?
Yeah, in terms of the applications, we still, in agricultural developments, there's still quite a few being sent back because insufficient information is being supplied, and the two big bits of information that's needed for an agricultural applications is a nutrient management plan and in most cases an air quality impact assessment. So in the figures that are in the briefing, you'll see that quite a few, a significant amount were sent back looking for that information. So we need to get it made clear that for all applications that needs to be front loaded, and that would certainly help our turnaround times, and it would certainly reduce the stress for applicants and being bounced back and forward between the planning authorities and NIEA, which is a significant criticism we have. To help remedy that, the Minister has initiated a number of ammonia stakeholder roundtables, which have been well attended and where these issues are being worked through. It's not exactly a co-design approach, but we are searching for solutions with the industry, environmental organisations and officials, trying to get to the point where the solution's good for everybody. Those meetings are continuing. So part of that is we have a commitment to review the advice we have on our website with regards to making it clear what applications or what an applicant needs to supply, and that work's ongoing.
Okay, Chair, if I could just try to get a bit of detail on that. I suppose speaking on behalf of those who believe that improvement in our air quality and improvement in our water quality is more important than any deadline or timeline, and I'm not disputing the importance of processes being on time, but given that necessary improvement as demonstrated in endless numbers of surveys and analysis over the recent time, can I ask then two things? First of all, what proportion of those applications sent back do not, when the information returns, show a clearly demonstrated better environmental outcome and are therefore likely to be rejected? and also, is there any indication in the proportion of applications being received that there is an increase that could be directly related to a forthcoming ammonia strategy, and that there might be an intent to get a number of applications finalised before that strategy is put in place?
I don't think we would have any analysis that would show that.
No, we don't have a great deal of analysis. To answer the first part of your question, it's impossible for us to determine whether those applications that require further information do represent an improvement, because the information just simply isn't there for us to make that determination. And that's goes to why we need it. We only request information that is reasonably necessary for us to give the conservation advice. If we don't need that advice, we don't ask for it. Or if we don't need that information, we don't ask for it. So in those cases, we can't answer your question because we don't have the detail with the applications to make that determination.
would there be a demonstrated or substantial increase in applications in the previous 12 months compared to the 12 before that, and the 12 before that, and so on?
This goes back to that question that Mr. McAleer asked, like for like developments and, replacements. And while we don't have the figures on that, the vast majority of those replacement developments we see have an element of expansion or more livestock, etc. within them. Very seldom do we see, I had a cattle shed here for 25 cows and building the exact same type of cattle shed for 25 cows in the same place. It's very unusual to see that.
I get right to seek that further detail if I require.
I think I'm right in saying that after questions at previous committee hearings, we've started recording information on whether they are exactly like for like or not. Okay. But I stand to be corrected on that. I think we've started recording that information. It'll be a very short time space, though.
We can follow up on that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Appreciate a good choice. Thanks, John. Thank you, guys. Anya?
Thank you, Chair. And a quick supplementary from John's questions there, and I suppose it's more out of curiosity than anything in relation to the planning agents who often act on behalf of applicants. Would you be of the opinion that maybe they don't fully understand the full suite of information that they need to apply to an application in the first place? As you had referenced that a lot of the time you seem to have to go back to applicants to request additional information, which then pushes the application, further down the line.
And no, that wouldn't be my opinion at all. Many of the agricultural consultants we deal with are very knowledgeable of what's required, and in effect, some have taken it to actually running air quality modelling by themselves, or certainly the screening tools that are freely available online. So I find them very knowledgeable, and there's a number of key consultants who are in fairly regular contact with myself who, know their business well and know what's needed.
Thank you for that. And just on some of the, I suppose, environmental breaches that have happened in relation to my park over recent months, are the department or yourselves currently investigating any of those breaches, and if so, where is that at the minute?
Yes, I can confirm that there are ongoing investigations in that area, and we certainly Minister and we are on record as taking those very seriously, and those are ongoing. Probably not something I want to comment on further, but I can assure the committee that is the case.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Good. Just before I bring Tom, I think Declan, you'd want something off the back of that, is it?
It wasn't off the back of that.
No.
Just a brief one.
All right. Do you mind if I bring Tom in just for his questions and then we'll come back? Declan, is that okay? Tom?
Thank you, Chair. In relation back to the A5, you did make a comment there that no official could give approval. This one we're talking about betterment. No official could give approval where there is environmental or likely to be environmental damage. Yet if we take the A5 cutting through 3,000 acres of prime farmland, then there's going to be environmental damage caused there. So therefore, farmers are going to be severely affected. Some are going to go out of business. Others are going to have to rebuild their farm business again, structurally in a sense. So there has to be some form of betterment there. Have you opened up any discussions as yet with regards to this whole issue of betterment for farmers even along the proposed A5?
So, yeah, I went to the full public inquiry on the A5 and heard the concerns of landowners and citizens who are concerned about the safety of the road. We only comment on the impacts on the natural environment with regards to habitats and species. Now, just so happens that yesterday I was in discussions with the DFI official about potential further compensation for landowners, but they were asking queries about what is allowable in certain circumstances, and it was very early discussions. That's due to landowners raising concerns with DFI and DFI asking what our advice would be on that. But with regards to how farms and businesses and people's homes are affected, that's outside of NIEA's remit and is with the DFI side.
Okay. The other issue was with regards to planning applications where you're double handling them or maybe treble handling them, and there are issues where environmental or NIEA come forward and they have cleared the application in a sense, they're happy with it. SES looks at it, raises problems, is sent back to you folk again, but your answer still remains the same, that you're satisfied with it. What percentage of applications do you know in that light are returned back to you again?
I'm not sure we collect that, but we can check the systems to see if we do have statistics on that and write to you with them. But I don't think it's a particularly high number, but that is just a guess. But we'll check the management information that we have and see if we can extract that for you.
We could probably take a broader commitment in terms of providing further information and reconsultations, if that would be useful.
I can just add to that, just certainly in terms of air quality and ammonia emissions, we met with SES just last week to talk over assessment procedures and, you know, getting that consistency with regards to us giving our advice to them and how they apply that advice in their assessments. So you should see a bit less of that in the future, I think, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it appears to be there's a difference of opinion between NIEA and SES, and that's causing a serious problem. You did talk as well with regards to having discussions with planning officers to try and avoid this duplication and come back. How's those discussions going?
Okay, those are discussions that we tend to have through. We have a regular meeting with the heads of planning within the councils, and it's really looking at where the processes that I'm looking to streamline are things like, can we put standing advice in place so that we can say to planning authorities, actually our advice for these sort of cases is always going to be like this, so you don't need to send us the case. The advice is there and you can take that into account in your decision-making process. Obviously, the more of those that we can have in place, the fewer consultations we will need to see and the fewer consultations the applicants will need to wait for our advice on before they get a decision from the planning authority. So it is an ongoing process of us talking with the heads of planning within the councils.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. And Declan?
Just a very brief one. I note on your report you have highlighted Maboy and drinking water as two key priorities, and you will be aware that the River Faughan runs past the Maboy site, and I know it'll take a long time, it's a long-term process to remediate that site, but are there guarantees or safeguards that their contamination won't seep in to the Faughan River and the drinking water for Derry?
Yeah, I mean, Richard, do you want to comment on our ongoing monitoring and work with?
Yes, absolutely, and we are fully committed to that ongoing monitoring process on the site there. It's a very detailed monitoring environmental monitoring programme in order to give us a full understanding of that site, and we're working very closely with Northern Ireland Water in relation to Carmoney treatment works and also contingency measures around that. So we're very closely in touch on all of that in terms of the river quality of the River Faughan. So very, very much at the forefront of our minds. I think we have something like 140 different monitoring points on the site to ensure, and those are monitored, and information comes through our water quality teams in Lisburn, and in fact that much of that information is on our website as well, so it can be looked at by anyone. So yeah, the firm commitment to that monitoring programme.
And you'd be confident, obviously you're confident that there isn't a seepage happening?
Well, there's a daily analysis of that water going into the Carmoney works there, and NI Water haven't reported any impact on the drinking water quality.
Thank you.
And I'm very conscious that you guys have given us quite a bit of time, but I want to just pick out on Declan's in regard to water quality, if that's okay, because I noticed that in terms of your key priorities, it is number 2. And could you tell me, just so that I understand, why it sits in there. I understand the need to have high water quality, but are there any concerns from NIEA in regards to keeping it there? And can you explain to me a wee bit better in terms of drinking water quality? Are you confident that we're measuring NI water in particular for the right sort of pollutants that it would be? And does it stack up when we're told repeatedly that our drinking water is of high quality?
So just to sort of clarify our role, so we have a drinking water inspectorate within the agency. The drinking water inspectorate's role is to be the environmental regulator for Northern Ireland Water. So the primary responsibility to ensure water quality lies with our Northern Ireland Water colleagues, and our drinking water inspectorate monitor the results of that and take any action as required if there are changes in that, or in fact, and we've seen recently, of course, with taste and odour issues, etc., that our drinking water inspector has been fully engaged in that. So it is a very clear public health issue, and it's really important from a Northern Ireland Water perspective that they are providing that clean water. That's what we do in terms of the regulation, and whenever there are any issues that are identified, we take very swift and immediate action for that. We'll all be aware that there are a range of water quality issues that are impacting, and it was referred to the stakeholder events that we held recently in relation to issues around Lough Neagh. So this is an ongoing focus for the agency, and we are looking at particularly the plans that will be coming forward in due course around, for example, the Water Framework Directive, River Basin Management Plans, etc., because we need to take a holistic approach to all of this work going forward. But again, on the very specifics on drinking water, that's our role, and again, there is information on our website in relation to the water quality monitoring to ensure that there is good clean water being provided.
At the risk of keeping you here much longer, are there regular updates for public information in regards to water quality in their area, and do NIEA have any current concerns with the quality of water? Again,
in terms of our website and in terms of Northern Ireland Water, there are ongoing updates in relation to that. There are always local incidents that are occurring, and NI Water are in the fore in dealing with those. We will then look at those incidents and consider whether remedial action needs to be taken, whether enforcement action needs to be taken. So, yes, there are various water quality indicators that can be identified on our website, for example. But also, and back to the previous question, we have daily water sampling in areas of particular concern, such as the Faughan River. So where there is a real focus and a real need, we focus on that and ensure that the information is available. And obviously, if there are concerns, folks can write to us and we can provide information on that as required. Thank you, members. We're content, and thank you very much for the time that you've given us today, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, members, agenda item 7 is fair pricing food supply chain. Before last week's formal meeting, the committee had an informal discussion around the food supply chain and also considered the proposed draft farm welfare bill by Farmers for Action. That discussion forwarded on from a previous informal meeting from the committee held with Farmers for Action in April. And as a result of our discussion last week, 3 draft letters are in the packet, pages 64 to 69, for our consideration to commence the committee's due diligence on this matter. And they are as follows: a draft letter to Minister Muir asking for a clear position on the Department's views on the proposed draft farm welfare bill, and if it is considering taking forward such a bill, or otherwise considering the matters included in it. Draft letter to DEFRA requesting information on how the UK Government is intending to restore stability for farmers, deliver a resilient and healthy food system with a new deal that ensures fairness in the supply chain across all sectors. And then a draft letter to Farmers for Action, highlighting the committee's agreed first steps to ensure its due diligence is conducted before any decision is made on how the committee might proceed to assess and deal with the matters that have been raised in the proposed draft farm welfare bill. Just for members, there is a list of supporters from Farmers for Action and table papers at page 30. Members,
Since the letter to Minister Muir was drafted, the Clerk has become aware that the Minister intends to launch a range of supply chain schemes during 2025 for new and existing groups to pursue opportunities for growth, develop products, processes and systems, as well as to address longer-term challenges affecting the agri-food sector. And the Clerk requested a query on these schemes be added to the Minister's letter, just asking for your agreement in that specific item, if that's okay, and we can cross that off. I'd just like to invite any comments in regard to the letters as drafted in your papers.
I'm happy enough.
No, I'm happy just with regards to the letter that was going to DEFRA, and I know that you've outlined very high level what each section entails. Can we attach a copy of the draft legislation just to be a bit more specific? Because some of those are very broad.
Yeah, Chair, we can double check that.
Yeah.
Farmers' Rights.
Yeah, just
I think
ensure that
we
they're
can.
content.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we can.
Yeah. Happy enough, members? Yeah, okay. If you're content, then we will publish this draft. And Michelle, thanks for your comments and thanks for your work on that, guys, last week and before. So once we have responses from the UK Government and Minister Muir on how they propose to take forward the matter of food pricing and the food supply chain, the committee can consider its next steps, which may involve, as we will discuss, contacting the stakeholders and I do like to carry out our due diligence as a committee in regard to this matter. So members, if you're content on that, I'm going to propose that we take a 5-minute comfort break, because those were, particularly last session was long enough, so I think if we take a 5-minute comfort break, and then regroup at 11:40, which will be 7 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Okay, guys, thank you for your indulgence there. I'm going to move to agenda item 8, which is the departmental written briefing on the Forest Service business plan for 24-25. So members, I refer you to pages 71 to 84 of the pack for the Forest Service business plan 24-25. It sets 12 targets for the 24-25 business year. 5 of them reflect the Minister's priorities for the agency to deliver. Priority areas relate to increasing afforestation, sustainable forest management, supporting climate change mitigation and protecting plant health and timber trading activities. So in terms of increasing afforestation, the aim is to increase forests and woodland in Northern Ireland from the current 8.6% of land area to 12% by 2050. Forest Service plans to create a further 600 hectares of new woodland and provides for the continued support of landowners to establish new woodlands through the forestry grant schemes. In terms of the sustainable forest management, the Forest Service will continue to manage its forests for economic, environmental and social benefits and seek independent certification that the forests meet the UK forestry standards. It will commence market engagement with onshore wind renewable energy suppliers to assess the potential for forests to contribute to renewable energy generation. In terms of supporting climate change mitigation and protecting plant health, Forest Service has set a target to map and quantify suitable peatland habitat sites for future restoration, protection of the forest estate and the wider environment from the threat of the introduction and spread of damaging pests and pathogens continues to be a priority activity. So in terms of timber trading activities, they continue to provide the majority of its operational income. The agency has set a target to generate 11 million from all sources at similar level to other years based on assurances of long-term contracts. Members of the Forest Service will implement an engagement action plan for its staff and work with stakeholders to build its capability to deliver future forestry and plant health priorities. Any comments from members in regard to that, or are you content to note? Thank you.
Chair, can I make a very quick comment that perhaps we could seek some further information on? Can you know more about the public engagement?
Yeah, you mentioned that.
In
yes.
short, and particularly when there's such opportunities there with forestry for appreciation, understanding and protection of nature. as well as outdoor learning and other opportunities, collaboration with other departments and agencies, and of course direct public community engagement as well. And I know they do some pieces of work with local councils. And I'm just wondering, A, why it's not there, B, could it be there, and C, I suppose, could we get more information around that?
Appreciate that, John. I know you've picked that thread up in a number of places, and I really appreciate that, and I think it's really good, given what we know around the mental health and wellbeing, the links to better health. So yeah, happy to do that. Content, members? Yep. Okay. Agenda item 9 is a departmental written briefing update on the development of the 3rd Northern Ireland Climate Change Adaptation Programme, NICAP 3. I refer you to pages 85 to 95 of the pack, and this is the written briefing from the Department on the development of the Northern Ireland Climate Change Adaptation Programme. DAERA is leading on the development of the programme on behalf of the Northern Ireland Executive Departments. The purpose of this paper is to provide the committee with an update on the latest position, the approach taken and the next steps in its development. Members, this is a substantial paper that you can read at your leisure, covering the Department's approach to the development of the NICAP 3 and its current position. The brief also addresses NICAP 2, the end of programme with returns received in all of the actions, and a copy of this report will be published on the DAERA website once it's been agreed. Both the Environmental Improvement Plan and the DAERA Business Plan 24-25 have a target date for publication of NICAP by 31st of March 25. And with our last briefing there, March 25 is going to be a busy time for the publication of a lot of documents. So the Department's next steps, members, once input has been received from all of the Northern Irish departments, the draft NICAP 3 will be finalised, and the Department will seek agreement from all the Northern Ireland Executive departments to the launch of a public consultation on the draft NICAP for a period of 8 weeks. Members, subject to executive agreement to proceed to consultation, the Department will provide a further written update, and I share a copy of both documents with the committee. And are you content to note at this stage, given the complexity and the degree of those papers? Yeah. Thank you. Agenda item 10 is the departmental written briefing update on the SIB review of TB eradication. I'm going to refer you to pages 96 to 116 in the pack, written briefing from the Department dated the 15th of October, an update on the SIB review of the TB Eradication Partnership, and an update on the Chief Veterinary Officer's review of bovine tuberculosis, and previous correspondence from the Minister, which was dated the 13th of September regarding the SIB review of the TB Eradication Partnership. Members, the background to this, I think, is known to you all, is that the Bovine Tuberculosis Eradication Partnership was a recommendation of the TB Strategic Partnership Group, which published its report on the development of a TB eradication strategy for Northern Ireland in 2016, which is 8 years ago. The Department then established the TBET in June 2018 to provide expert independent advice on the development and implementation of a new bovine tuberculosis eradication strategy for Northern Ireland, following a number of extensions. The tenure of the most recent members of the TBET expired on the 31st of December 2023. Members, at the meeting on the 19th of September, you received a copy of the completed review of TBET undertaken by the SIB. This written briefing now provides a summary of the recommendations made by SIB, alongside an update on the ongoing review of bovine tuberculosis-related matters currently being undertaken by the Chief Veterinary Officer, Brian Dewar. His review will also examine the Department's approach to stakeholder engagement, and will consider the recommendations within the SIB report and make recommendations on how the Department progresses. The Department's next steps are subject to ministerial consideration, where the Chief Veterinary Officer's review will produce a new delivery plan which will set out actions to tackle bovine tuberculosis. Some actions will likely require public consultation, and new or amending legislation, and almost certainly additional resources. Members, the Chief Veterinary Officer and the Minister will provide no briefing to this committee on November the 28th. Are you content to note at this stage, or do you have any comments that you wish to send to the Minister before he briefs us at the end of November?
We're getting a brief on the 28th, isn't it?
The 8th of November, so yeah, it's literally only, 4 weeks more or less, so is that okay? Thank you, members. Okay, we now have an additional agenda item which we're going to discuss next, if that's okay. This is agenda item 15. And it's the draft statutory instrument, the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Trading Scheme. Members, I refer you to table papers at pages 31 to 70, and if you just allow me, I'm going to do that myself. Okay. That was a letter led by the department, and also the above named draft statutory instrument was led in the Business Office on the 22nd of October. The statutory instrument is subject to the Assembly's draft affirmative procedure. Minister Muir has given consent for the above draft order to be led before the Northern Ireland Assembly along with the accompanying explanatory memorandum. The purpose of the draft order is to make technical amendments to the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Trading Scheme Order 2020, which established the UK Emissions Trading Scheme, also known as ETS. This draft order is being led for approval before each House of Parliament, the Northern Ireland Assembly, the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Senate under paragraph 11 of the Schedule 3 to the Climate Change Act of 2008 as an order in Council. Members, in summary, the draft order establishes a net zero aligned emissions cap for the ETS, including introducing provisions which determine the number of allowances that can be created. It includes flights from Northern Ireland to Switzerland within the scope of the scheme. Okay. Introduces a deficit notice for participants who fail to surrender sufficient allowances by the surrender deadline. It makes a number of corrections to civil penalties, and it legislates for the inclusion of upstream oil and gas sector process emissions from CO2 venting. It also extends a number of provisions to Northern Ireland which were made on a UK-wide basis during the period when the Northern Ireland Assembly was not sitting. Okay, members, are you content to recommend that this SI is approved by the Assembly to be made?
Yeah.
Yes, but do we need more information on this, or do we need a briefing on it? I'm just mindful of the papers that are coming, obviously, in correspondence with regards to scrutiny and so on of SIs, and whether or not, we maybe do need a briefing on that. I'm not sure, as I'm asking.
Yeah, I've no issue with that, and as Chair, I'd certainly be content to receive more information. It's led on the 22nd, so we do have probably a bit of a cushion in terms of trying to receive it.
Yes.
And if we do we want to establish, is it a broad remit just in terms of the update then, in terms of the technicalities of
It's more, I suppose, the specifics of it,
yeah.
Because obviously members are going to have to make comment on it in the chamber as well.
Yeah.
So I think it just might be useful just to have a briefing if you're content to do that.
Yeah, I'm content, yeah. Will we content, members?
Yeah, yes, I did check out with another committee regarding SIs, and they have, because it's one of those areas, because our own examiner statutory rules does not at this point have
the scope
to look at the technicalities, that they have, on occasions received briefings. So it is something that's been done for SIs. So, yeah.
Okay, if we can get a briefing from the department on that then, and work within our own time frames then of the response for that coming before the Assembly then, or not. Okay, return to the main agenda. Members, agenda item 11 is correspondence. 11.1 members at page 118 of the pack is the correspondence memo. And at 11.2 I refer you to correspondence dated the 16th of October from the Ulster Farmers Union and the National Sheep Association at pages 119 to 120 of the pack regarding funding being withdrawn by the Department for MV checks and controls in Northern Ireland. MV is a notifiable, highly infectious viral disease, and currently NI has an MV-free status. The fear is if the department stops control measures, this status could be lost. MV has a long incubation period and is difficult to diagnose on clinical signs alone. So members of the UFU and the NSA feel that the sheep industry could be exposed to MV, and that could cause a devastating impact on NI flocks. They would like to arrange a meeting with the committee to discuss this matter of the removal of MV funding. Members, it may be wise that we write to the department in the first instance for the rationale behind this meeting before arranging, but I have no objections to that. I think it would be courtesy to let the department know that we are interested and are going to facilitate a meeting if you're minded. Michelle?
Yeah, I've been speaking to people involved with this over the last number of weeks, and did a member statement and so on too, and I've asked a few questions. So there seems to be sort of we don't really know where this sits with regards to whether a decision has been made or not. So I suppose some clarity in relation to that would be useful. But just, I suppose, because the UFU have asked for this meeting, and I was just wondering whether or not it would be timely even to have a general update from the UFU anyway, with regards to other issues.
Problem. I think we're gonna maybe discuss that
Another
just
matter
in the
later,
we're gonna grab
As to
that.
what-
Yeah,
But it may be useful, like, we could
Yes.
maybe merge those.
Yeah. Content, members? Yep. Okay, thank you very much for that, Michelle. 11.3, members, I refer you to a copy of correspondence dated the 15th of August, 24, pages 121 to 125 of the pack from the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee regarding a response to John Stewart MLA on the difficulties in the delivery of some products to Northern Ireland due to changes under the Windsor Framework. The Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee has copied us into the response from Baroness Heyman, dated 15th of October 24, regarding Purina and changes to the current customs arrangements. This is the response that, of note, this policy is under the remit of HM Revenue and Customs. Therefore, my office will ask HMRC colleagues to contact Purina to confirm the delay that is in place and to ensure that these products are available for dog breeders in Northern Ireland. I'm copying this response to the Northern Ireland Assembly Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee. Are you content to note, guys? Yeah. And it is useful even to get those updates from the committee that's also sitting at the same time. 11.4, members, I refer you to email correspondence dated the 23rd of October at pages 33 of the table of papers from the Ulster Farmers Union regarding concerns of their members about the A5 Western Corridor. Around 3,000 acres of prime agricultural land and 314 working farms are impacted, and the UFU are striving to ensure that impacted landowners are treated fairly. As of this week, landowners have now all received their vesting packs, and the confirmed date of vesting is the 25th of November 24. UFU are making an urgent request to speak or to present the concerns to the committee. The clerk did speak to the UFU, and they requested the committee consider a joint meeting with the infrastructure. And I know that Michelle, you'd alluded to that earlier. Keen to do that, but also conscious of the fact that some of those joint meetings are just hard to get. And I think the fact that the vesting packs, the closing date of that's 25th of November, puts a sense of urgency on us to get some kind of a briefing from the UFU. So I understand from the clerk that the UFU will be writing to request to brief us on other wider policy matters, meeting with the Minister. But we may want to keep this matter separate to facilitate a sooner meeting. We can look at that in the forward work plan, but if you're content to invite the UFU to brief on this specific issue as soon as possible, keen to do that. If there's space within the meeting to discuss wider issues, fair enough, but I think we need to agree that on this matter we'll facilitate that, and then we can discuss the wider brief if it's suitable in terms of the time that we have.
Just for clarity, Chair, are you suggesting that can we go ahead and have a joint meeting with infrastructure?
We seek one, yeah. So I think we seek one, and if it can be facilitated in the short term, certainly do it. But if we, I would say what I'm saying is we don't not have a meeting with the UFU anyway. We don't pin it all on one. Because the clerk will have to obviously liaise. We don't know what the infrastructure committee will be dealing with at the moment, and if it's possible, it would be good. But what I'm suggesting is that we don't slow our own process down. The other thing that I'm keen to do in this one is to ensure that this committee has a good voice in that joint committee meeting. That we sort of have some reasonably collegiate approach to the facilitation of that meeting. Because sometimes I've stepped into those joint committee meetings at times and I felt maybe that they weren't as useful and conducive as they could have been, so there's a wee amount of prep that would need to be had before that, if we're minded to do that. So we're agreeable to the joint meeting, and if it can be facilitated before the 25th, great. But it's also, I think it's good for us to get as early as possible a meeting with the UFU in regard to this specific item. And can I leave that with the clerk too?
Sure, it certainly could be tricky because we already have an extra meeting on the 19th. To facilitate our work with the rural groups on the 21st, so it certainly sounds as if it would be better to go ahead with the UFU and see what we can do in the other regard. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, we'll strive for the top of the ladder, and we'll ensure that this committee does its due diligence and carries it out as function.
We're minded to have a meeting with UFU on a specific one agenda item on the A5 issue. Right. And I'm no issue with that. And then the separate meeting will be broader policy, which is being tabled anyway according to earlier agenda items.
I had a look at the forward work plan, and I think that's the way it'll have to be, just in mind of how much work we do have coming ahead, and to give each item its level of priority. I think the meeting with infrastructure would be brilliant if we could have it But what I don't want to do is to waste the time in between, and then in the 25th of November is going to come around like that, and I think it's particularly to the farming community, we owe them that space to get this done as quickly as we can.
Sorry, Chair, have they had an opportunity at all to brief the Infrastructure Committee before?
Yeah,
give this mandate, those farming groups sorry, not the farming groups, farmers themselves. I think there is a campaign group in and around that West Tyrone area, but I'm just wondering, have they already briefed the committee? Could we even get a timeline of?
Certainly the email on this matter only came like yesterday early evening, so I slotted it in just for. I can check.
I think, and everybody I do believe is facing the same way in regard to the ambition to have a safe road. I don't think that's I think that the speed that the Minister has announced that and stuff has caught some people on the hop in regards to probably having the meetings in advance and stuff, and now I think we all need to turn our attention just to ensure that there is a platform for people to ensure that they're represented. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that, guys. Appreciate that. Agenda item 12 is the forward work plan. I refer you to the draft forward work plan in the packet 127129, so that's obviously now going to be this is where the clerk and her team will earn their corn. The committee team have now contacted the rural groups who will be briefing the committee on the 21st of November. The groups have been asked to highlight the main issues and concerns of rural communities and good practice examples. There will then follow a question and answer session. All will be heard in public session. Members, as agreed, there will be an additional committee meeting on Tuesday the 19th of November, which is now booked for room 29 at 10 a.m. So if you could pop that into your diaries, having the extra meeting should give us more time to hear from the rural groups on the Thursday. And are you content to note? Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, the clerk wishes to highlight that the 20th of November shows the start of a bill committee stage. That should not yet be in the forward work plan, as it's entirely dependent on the date of the introduction of that bill, so will be removed in the published version. Content? Okay. Agenda item 13. Unlucky for some. Any other business? Yep, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I note that there's a lot of concern that's been raised by the Farmers Union here, but also a lot by the Farmers Union, the NFU in Britain, about the prospect of agricultural property relief being taken away, and that would be devastating, absolutely devastating for particularly for small farmers who are passing on to the next generation. I note that the NFU has written to the Chancellor in Britain, Rachel Reeves, and I'm wondering if that's something maybe this committee might consider doing, just to add our voice to that there. As a proposal.
I'm very keen that we would do that, Declan. Members are content that we do that?
Yeah, it would be devastating, because right now, a working farm can be passed on to the next generation and it's exempt from inheritance tax. If that was removed, that would be devastating, and there's a lot of talk in Britain that this could be removed. It would be devastating.
And the normal inheritance tax rules would apply, and therefore, yeah. Thank you for that, Declan. I appreciate that. That's the reason why we have to keep all eyes open on what's happening in regards to the Labour government too. Are there any other items of business that anyone else wants to bring up? No? Okay. The date and time of the next meeting is the 7th of November. So enjoy recess, guys, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. Committee Room 21. Sound. Committee Room 21. Sound. Committee Room 21. Sound. Committee Room 21. signed. Committee Room 21, 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 signed.